you for joining us. My name is Lorena Molina Irizarry. I'm the Director of Operations with the Census Open Innovation Labs. We are the innovation hub within the United States Census Bureau as part of the Department of Commerce. And we're going to talk a little bit about what we do and our flagship program, what you might have heard about in the past, the Opportunity Project. With that, we have a quick question poll. Again, if you click on the poll, please respond to that. And in a few results. All right, so with that, I want to hand it over to Anna. And please, again, continue to, as you trickle in to complete the poll, and maybe Anna, go to the next slide. We want to know what audience you represent. If you're joining from federal government, state, local government, you're a technologist, or you represent NGO and or a community organization. If you're a CFA Brigade member, please drop that on the chat as well.
Great, thank you, Lorena. My name is Anna Valuev, and I'm Head of Strategic Initiatives with the Opportunity Project. Like Lorena mentioned, the Opportunity Project is an innovation program within the Census Open Innovation Labs. And we bring together technologists, government, and communities to really develop digital tools together with federal open data. And so we're really looking forward to hearing who's in the room and what representatives we have from each of these three groups that represent the ecosystem of the Opportunity Project. The way that we bring these technologists and government and community leaders together is primarily through 12 to 14-week technology development sprints, which we'll be sharing about today. But we also do this through workshops and roundtables that bring together folks from federal agencies and NGOs and technologists to really ideate together on, what are some national challenges that are requiring data and technology innovation. And this happens at the start of our sprint cycles and throughout. We also run prize competitions, which we're looking forward to sharing a little bit more about later today, and ways to get involved in government prize competitions. And we also do data curation and bring together federal open data sets around a particular challenge to really help technologists navigate federal open data, which can often be a daunting task. And the Opportunity Project was founded in late 2015, early 2016, and really was on the ground of bringing together federal open data and community engagement. And the idea was really that with open data, the government on its own maybe can build one really great tool, but it's just one. But if you really empower companies and students and creators with that federal open data, they can build many tools for many different audiences that can address needs of a really diverse set of community leaders. And these are tools that really none of us from government or in technology space or communities could build on their own. But when we bring all of these diverse stakeholders together and really engage communities, that's when these diverse set of tools are developed.
And Anna, I'm so sorry to interrupt. I don't think we're seeing you the slide deck roll through, at least on my end. I just see the first slide.
That's very odd because I'm seeing it progressing on my end. Let me try unsharing and resharing. Oh, other people are saying they're seeing it progress. Maybe are folks seeing what happened since? Okay. It seems like folks in the chat are seeing it. Okay.
I think we're good.
Okay. And over the last 5 years since 2016, the Opportunity Project has facilitated 12 sprint cycles. We've engaged with over 25 federal agencies who've identified a really diverse set of challenges that are addressed through those sprints. And we've brought together over 1,300 stakeholders from outside of government, so representing technologists and students and community leaders. We've engaged over 15 universities and are continuing to do so this year. And technologists in the sprints have incorporated over 300 open federal data sets into their products. And over those last 5 years, we've catalyzed the development of over 135 digital products, which we're really excited to share some examples of today. And since 2019, when we launched our first prize challenge, we've awarded over $100,000 in prizes to really celebrate creative uses of federal open data to solve really key social and environmental challenges. And the products have launched over 6 demo days, one of which was actually a demo week that we piloted this year over the course of 3 days. And that's really a culmination event to showcase all of the products that have been developed through the sprints. And this is a slide of just a few of the organizations that have participated on the technology side in the Opportunity Project. And those have included big tech companies like Google and LinkedIn and Microsoft, but also universities like Georgetown and Columbia and Harvard and others, but also nonprofit organizations and startups, both big and small. And so we're really, looking forward to sharing a little bit more about the Opportunity Project and hopefully, to engage many of the technologists and community leaders and government folks in the room today. So just a few slides on how the Opportunity Project works to give you some background, and then we'll be jumping into lessons learned around funding and product sustainability in civic tech. So through the top process, the beginning of any sprint is problem statement development, and we work with federal agencies and NGOs to develop problem statements that represent key national challenges that are requiring data and technology innovation. And these have been identified across agencies, and as you can see, these are just a subset of the challenges that we've addressed over the last 5 years. So last year we ran sprints focused on the natural and built environment, and so we collaborated with EPA on a problem statement around transportation emissions and air quality, and with the State Department on a problem statement around ocean plastic pollution. In the past, we've also addressed challenges of disaster response and civics education and entrepreneurship and support of recently resettled refugees. And so the problem statements very much vary year to year and are identified through a combination of both federal agencies and NGO leaders. And in order to address these challenges, we really bring together a coalition of experts. So these include technologists who form tech teams who are actually developing the digital products, user advocates who are community leaders, NGOs, and folks with lived experience of the challenges to really ground the process in human-centered design and help the tech teams understand the challenges on the ground to make sure that whatever is being built is really addressing the needs of local communities. User advocates might represent NGOs, but they could also represent state and local government leaders as well. We also bring in federal data experts who represent different data sets relevant to each of the challenges to help the teams navigate questions about the data or additional relevant data sets. For each of the problem statements, we'll curate an initial list of federal open data that might be relevant, but the data stewards are really helpful to the tech teams in understanding, what do the different variables represent, or what other data might I look for within a particular agency? And really to ensure the sustainability of the products after the sprint and make sure that they get into the hands of the intended end users, we have a role called the product advisor, and we're actually joined today by a top product advisor. So we're really looking forward to hearing from him later today. But product advisors are typically folks from outside of government who help teams think about the longer term sustainability of their products after the sprint, their go-to-market strategies, their funding strategies, and really how to ensure that the products are making the impact that they are intended to make down the line. And so all of these different collaborators work together over the course of a 12 to 14 week sprint. And the sprints are really organized milestones. So we come together as a cohort every 2 weeks, and the teams share their progress and updates and receive feedback and questions from all of the other collaborators. So we begin the process with user research, and the teams engage with those user advocates, really ask key questions about the needs and challenges on the ground. And then we all come together as a cohort for the user research milestone, and we hear about the insights that the tech teams learned from the user advocates, and they might receive feedback or suggestions for additional research or conversations. Over the next few weeks, the teams really dig into the data. They connect with federal data experts and really understand and think through what data sets they might incorporate into their product. And then again, we all come together as a cohort, and the tech teams share, their potential data sets. They ask questions and they get feedback, and really we facilitate discussion around those data sets. And then over the next few weeks after that, the teams are really thinking through what their concept is and what they plan to build during the sprint. And so during the concept pitch, they share with the group what their idea is for their product, and again, get feedback and questions from the rest of the group. And each of these milestones is joined by the tech team and the user advocates and the federal agency leads who wrote those problem statements and the data experts. So they're really getting cross-sector feedback and collaboration. And then the teams share a few demos throughout after their concept pitch, and we can see the products in progress. And then the products launch at a demo day or week, which is really a culmination event at the end of the sprint that showcases all of the products that were built. We bring together, government stakeholders and technologists and community leaders for not only live demos and lightning talks of the products, but also community panels, student panels. So last year we ran a 3-day demo week that was a virtual conference, and we had over 24 sessions and over 100 speakers. So it's really a showcase and culmination event at the end of each sprint cycle. And then we often are asked, what happens to the products after the sprint? And the products themselves and the IP is owned and maintained by the teams who built them. So typically each of the problem statements is addressed by 2 to 4 tech teams. So those tech teams own and maintain those products afterwards. But if teams would like to, they can continue to, collaborate with federal agencies through contracts or procurement, but that's definitely not kind of the goal of the Opportunity Project. It's certainly not expected, but it is something that we've seen happen in the past. Though again, really, for the most part, the products are launched and maintained and kind of worked on by the tech teams who built them. And we also offer a prize competition. So this allows teams to apply for additional funding to really continue developing and launching their product after the sprint. And we'll talk a little bit more about the prize competition that we are running this year and some lessons learned from past prize competitions. So I will turn it over to Drew to introduce herself and to share some lessons learned from the last 5 years of the Opportunity Project.
Thanks. This is Drew. I'm a director and co-founder of the Opportunity Project. I was part of our founding team almost 5.5 years ago now. And yeah, I know for those of you who might not be as familiar with the Opportunity Project, it's a lot all at once to hear the background, but hopefully you have a better sense of what we do. We're really about catalyzing civic tech and helping to bring government data to the table. And one thing that we'll talk about a lot in this session is the power of government as a convener, which is probably certainly a theme at CFA Summit. But yeah, that's really what our stake in this is. The federal government holds so much data that as open data, it really belongs to the people. And we have a mission to get that out to the public better because it can save lives, it can benefit lives, it can drive the economy and create so much value for people if we can get it into other people's hands and transform it through technology. So we're all about opening up that data and really curating the right group of people that includes community, grassroots level stakeholders and government and technologists and product experts. And that's really the special sauce, is how we bring all of those people together to go through a very accelerator-like process to catalyze civic technology. And through the 5 years of TOP, we definitely have learned, and even in talking with some of the experts in civic tech, probably many of them who are here at this conference who have thought about this problem a lot, product sustainability is often the hardest part of this whole process. You can participate in a sprint cycle, create an amazing prototype or a working piece of technology, but ultimately what happens after that period is really challenging because technology costs money, servers cost money, like things need to run, and really reaching end users is also incredibly difficult to ensure that what you've created wasn't just built alongside end users, but then it really has a path to get into their hands. So we've thought a lot about this problem, and really the purpose of this session is to open up our playbook and just share what we've learned with you. Very much a discussion. I don't think we have the perfect answers, but we're here to share what we know and would love to hear all of y'all's thoughts on this and the questions that you have or ideas that you have as well. And then we're super excited to have Froy here, who will share his wisdom as a civic technologist and former product advisor in the Opportunity Project. So I'll just kind of set the context here and say that we kind of think about this a couple of different ways. Once we've identified this problem several years ago, that product sustainability and deployment is in some ways the hardest part of this process, and we need to do more to support teams after the sprint and set them up for success. There are ways that we tackled that in our own sprint process. So Anna talked about the product sustainability milestone, the workshops that we do that is really about bringing people together with expertise in product that government officials don't necessarily have. So some of it is during the sprint, even just creating space for teams to think about what happens afterwards. But a lot of it is about what happens next. And in how we've approached this is first with what we can do directly as government. And then second, it's about who else we can bring to the table to fill in the gaps in what information or what resources government can't provide. And that's where we will turn it over to our expert product advisor. So just to lay the context for the part that government can provide. So we'll talk about, of course, funding is always very top of mind for people. So we'll talk about prize competitions and challenges, which are one of the ways that not just the Census Bureau, but government agencies in general are able to fund civic technologies through prizes. And then we'll talk about some of the things that we can do that really focus on relationship brokering and the convening power of government. So we can give out money in certain cases, especially through prizes like Anna mentioned, and then we can bring people to the table. And it's something that's all the way back to the roots of the Opportunity Project, and a lot of digital government in general is about that convening power. So we'll talk about sort of how bringing people together can help you as a civic technologist or as a government official or whatever role you're in to sort of learn about the key stakeholders and requirements and user needs that are in play in the field that you're working in. How this could open up greater opportunities for contracting to even learn about how contracting can support your work, if that's a business channel you hadn't thought about yet. And lastly, the critical role of community partnerships and how brokering those relationships through participatory government processes can be really transformative. And before I turn it over, I believe, to Lorena, I just want to flag, I'm sorry, to Anna, we do really, I think that through our process, we sort of started off the Opportunity Project at the very beginning, thinking all about, open source, making everything free. And there is absolutely a place for that. Like, open source is critical, and sometimes that's the best play. But I think what we've come to realize over the years of this program and having 130 teams come through the process, it's that sometimes having something that's solvent and sustainable and will be around for 5 years in terms of a tech product is maybe more important than having it be purely open and purely free. Maybe there are freemium models that can work. Maybe this does need to become a business while still supporting as many users as possible and the people who really need it. So that's certainly a lens that we bring to this, is that civic technology needs to have sustainability and product viability, and sometimes bringing that product mindset into the work can make all the difference in having these really incredible products be lasting. So we'll share as much as we can about that. Super excited to have our guest panelist join us, who has a totally different lens and is incredibly valuable. So I think with that, I'll turn it over to Anna to talk more about prizes.
Thanks, Drew. So on this slide, you can see a little bit about prize challenges. So a prize challenge is an open competition in which members of the public submit ideas or prototypes or designs, plans, methods, products. It can really vary to federal agencies for review and the potential to win a prize. And those prizes can be monetary, they can be in kind. So there's a wide variety of kind of outcomes of prize challenges. And the way that federal agencies are able to facilitate these prizes is through America Competes Authority, and COMPETE stands for Creating Opportunities for Meaningfully Promoting Excellence in Technology, Education, and Science Act. And so this is the authority that the Census Bureau has used for the Opportunity Project prize challenges. So we launched our first prize challenge in 2019, which awarded $100,000 across 5 tech teams in 5 different categories, and really was meant to celebrate creative and effective uses of federal open data through the creation of digital products that serve the American public. And tech teams who participated in Opportunity Project sprints or used our product development toolkit, which really lays out our process and model for the development of technology, were eligible to apply for that challenge. And we'll talk a little bit later in the presentation about this year's prize challenge, which we'd love to share more information about, and hopefully some of the folks joining us today will decide to apply for that challenge that will be open from the summer through kind of the end of the fall. And our prize challenge is just one example of many prize challenges that are run by different federal agencies. But just to give you a sense of one of from the past sprint that received prize challenge funding in 2019 was data2go.nyc, which was created by Measure of America. Really incorporated federal, local, and state level data to help with engagement around 2020 census efforts. And the prize money that this team received was used in a number of ways. So they used it to continue building out the product that they started to create through the sprint. And they actually hired summer interns. They're a nonprofit organization, and so those funds really went a long way. They also ran interactive events to engage with the community, given the really community-based, focus of their product. And then they also used the funds to measure the impact of their product at the community level in New York City and to build out some of those impact measurement tools. So this is just one example of the 5 teams that received prize funding in 2019, and we're really looking forward to launching another prize challenge later this year. But again, prize authority is a really interesting way to receive funds from federal agencies, and is definitely something to look out for and to consider, because many agencies are now using this authority to issue their own prize challenges. And so now I'm going to turn it over to Lorena to talk a little bit about really the power of government as a convener of community partnerships, and how some of those partnerships come to fruition through the Opportunity Project.
Thanks, Anna. So like Anna was saying, we definitely not only value, but we see it as a critical part of the success of the Opportunity Project and community engagement at large, that government serves as a convening. And those community partnerships, whether it's seen as just stakeholder engagement or in the role of the user advocates, Anna explained earlier, government can attract different set of stakeholders that are across industries and sectors to have really important conversations to address some of these very pressing challenges, whether at a national level or at a local level. And some examples of how we've baked this in through the Opportunity Project sprint cycle is that even before we start with the user research phase in the milestone slide that Anna presented earlier today, we actually create an environment and kind of a container for together in addressing some of these challenges, and not only learn from the community and from data users and from the people that are experiencing these challenges firsthand, but also as a learning opportunity to provide input into the work in the scope of the Opportunity Project. But I think we can think about this more broadly in federal government and state local government, of the critical role that communities play in informing how technology is being built, how services and products are being delivered to the public and to the nation. And again, that happens at the federal level and certainly at the state local level. And of course, the CFA brigades are the primary example of that. It's that community engagement and building that community what makes it successful. So in 2018, we actually tested and piloted out our first engagement with the community in of course, at that point, it were physical engagements and events. Where the first year we actually were addressing geospatial challenges. We held a geospatial cohort, went down to Puerto Rico actually after Hurricane Maria, and we convened a lot of different stakeholders. And just to give you an example, in 2018, it was the Open Data for Puerto Rico event, and we had emergency respondents in the room. We had state, local government, we had technologists, students, universities, academics from, all from the entire island, as well as federal government, and even folks representing other aspects of government outside of Puerto Rico, and technologists. And what this proved is that it not only informs creating the problem statement and understanding the use case for the audience and the targeted potential end users for any type of product or technology developed throughout the sprint process, is the insights that you gain from that are just invaluable. And we use human-centered design approaches and methodologies and practices to actually extract as much insight in those conversations so that it is actually valuable throughout the sprint and in the future. And one of the things that we really want to hone in terms of thinking about government as a convener is that role of the user advocate could be applied to anything that we do at a local level and at a national and federal level. And one of the ways is exemplifying how the use of human-centered design and design thinking methodologies and practices can actually help in carrying on these conversations. And for all of the technologists that are on, whether you're a designer, if you have exposure, of course, with human-centered design practices, you know how valuable this could be. And we just need to bring others along that might not have that experience to understand that these are methodologies that are not only essentially the anchor of the Opportunity Project, but that can also open channels and conversations with industries and sectors that together. The government can't do it alone, industry can't do it alone. Certainly, community organizations that are, for the most part, under-resourced, underfunded, certainly need this cross-sector perspective of addressing, important challenges at a local level or national. So this is an example of what you see here of, activities and events that we've done in the past and how we convene. We definitely transition. We have always done our sprints virtually. These tech and community workshops, we did them in person for a while, and we actually transitioned, of course, last year to virtual events, which actually open up so many other opportunities for us. And we're going to talk a little bit more about government as a convener. But with that, I want to hand it over to Drew to talk a little bit more about how government plays a role in making government contracting and the procurement process accessible, thinking outside the box on not just thinking about procurement as a way to be able to work with government if you're a technologist or a startup company. Certainly, government has implemented aside, Opportunity Project is just one example of many other accelerators and programs that are meant to connect tech industry and government to drive innovation forward. So with that, I'll hand it over to Drew.
So I'm really excited to maybe start this out by answering a question from Luke that was in the chat. And the question is, How did we make the case for publicly funding challenge-based sprints without a guaranteed outcome? And that, I think, totally plays into this whole conversation. And I definitely want to emphasize something that people often don't necessarily catch when we're first explaining this process, which is that the tech teams are not compensated for participating in this process, nor do they pay. It's a no money changes hands sort of opportunity, almost like a long hackathon where you're participating for other reasons. And kind of eating our own dog food, we're very user-centered in how we design our sprint engagements. So we asked tech teams, why did you participate in this? So I think the short answer to Luke's question is we did not really need funding at first, and we used the old government startup model of just do it scrappy and don't demonstrate results before you ask for money. And that's exactly what we did. We came in, just like Anna said, at the very beginning of this process, at the very beginning of this movement towards open government and civic technology. This was back in 2015. For those of y'all who were around then, I think we were just starting to see the U.S. Digital Service, PIFs, that was just emerging. So there was a new interest in government creating technology. This was really the beginning of government open sourcing problem statements and, engaging the private sector to also create solutions, engaging Code for America brigades to also create solutions right alongside the in-house solutions in government. And so since then, we got in early and we experimented. We did a couple of sprints having no idea. We weren't asking for a lot of money, so people weren't breathing down our necks saying, what are the outcomes going to be? We just tried it and didn't even know if we should continue it. But the fact that it worked right away, that we did see incredible products come out of the early sprints, was how we built momentum. So for anyone on the government side, highly recommend and endorse that approach of just doing as much as you can with no resources, just people and time, and building a coalition, and then using that to build momentum and then ask for money later. So hopefully that answers your question. Please chime in if it didn't. But that being said, this did catch on, and now we're 5 years later, and all of these processes are popping up all over government. So the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau just ran an open tech sprint that a number of nonprofits and companies participated in. The Department of Veterans Affairs has a whole tech sprint model that is based on the Opportunity Project. We're just wrapping up a sprint with the Department of Health and Human Services that now runs tech sprints based on top. And some of them are sort of loosely based, but it's just becoming a more and more common practice for government agencies to engage in, where they, conduct some type of tech sprint process that's open to the public. Any kind of civic technologists outside of government can and really should participate in those. And I think that's our point here, is that, again, coming down to technology has to be funded somehow. Maybe this isn't a dedicated process to result in contracts, but by participating in these open processes, you're going to learn the environment better. You're going to get to know the players involved. You will understand more about how government thinks about requirements and what other companies and nonprofits and organizations are involved in the ecosystem. And then maybe down the line, that does result in some type of government funding that helps you to really expand and grow your civic tech project or product. So I think what we're really in these conversations saying now on both sides, to government, we're saying, you really should be doing these processes. If you're not running open tech sprints yet, this is something that you should do to better get to know your data users, generate better solutions for your mission area. And then on the other hand, to the technologists in this group and the civic tech community, Code for America brigades, you absolutely should participate in as many of these processes as possible, because really one of the benefits, if you're asking why the heck do tech teams even do this, one of the reasons that we hear over and over again is that it really provides them benefits in terms of relationship building, getting to know all of those people who are in the cohort with different types of expertise. So highly encourage you to participate in things like TOP and at other agencies for those reasons. And then also, because of the way that we bring product experts and product advisors to the table, that really has a benefit in terms of the knowledge you can gain, the relationships you can build. In addition to the amazing Froy, who we'll hear from shortly, Decode is just one example of an incredible organization that is dedicated to helping agencies make better use of commercial technology and helping sort of unconventional tech players come into the government contracting space. So even though federal agencies can't say, hi, we want to give you a contract, because that's not legal strictly, there are organizations like Decode who are partners to government, who exist purely to bring new tech players into the government contracting market, because every agency is giving out contracts, and there are organizations dedicated to making that a more inclusive process, a process that better reflects emerging tech, civic tech, mission-oriented technology for agencies. So this is all kind of a plug to get involved in these processes, because it really will help you to build those relationships and build the knowledge that you need for different pathways that will help you out down the line. One example of that, really briefly, is a product called Seal that was built by our awesome partner, Datel Ovella, a tech team that participated in 2 of our sprints. So they came into a sprint, they are a commercial tech company, but they were working on using satellite data, and we brought them into a sprint focused on a FEMA problem statement related to disaster preparedness. They kind of educated FEMA about a way of thinking about that problem that they just hadn't even considered, which was around not just telling people how to be prepared, have your bottled water, avoid floods, whatever the case may be. It was really about predicting infrastructure failure. So they brought in this really novel approach. And although it wasn't their intention, they did end up developing this ongoing collaboration with FEMA that did help them to partially fund this product, because FEMA found it so incredibly useful that they wanted to deploy it in places like New York City and Puerto Rico, among others. So this is not at all to say that we want you to come into this product because you'll get government contracts. That's not what it's about. It's really about, by participating in any open government process, you're inherently going to develop relationships with the government people who are also really interested in the challenges that you're focused on, and will create opportunities down the line that could really help to advance your work. So I think now we'll turn it over to Anna to wrap up some of the ways that we see other people helping in these processes.
Thanks, Drew. So one of the ways that we have been able to really support teams in their kind of post-sprint sustainability strategies is through the product advisor role. And this was a role that we introduced a few years into the Opportunity Project, because we heard from teams and really saw that what happens after the sprint was really something that was very important, and often something that teams were really looking for additional support on. And so, like I mentioned earlier, product advisors, they come from outside of government, and we really carefully recruit product advisors. They typically come from product management or venture capital or product strategy roles in the private sector, and really help to guide teams on their strategies from the very start of the sprint. And so we ask that product advisors really are connecting with tech teams every few weeks of the sprint, and we provide kind of information on what to cover during each of those calls. But also, product advisors have so much expertise that they're really able to adapt and modify, some of those resources that we provide to share their critical insights. And really that's thinking about, is your product something that's standalone, or can it be incorporated into an existing product? Who are your end users, and where might you find them? Should you connect, and make a partnership with a community-based organization, or, are there other opportunities, or do you already have, an existing audience base, or is this something that you'll need to cultivate? And so really thinking about those key questions early on is so critical, because we often see that tech teams are really hyper-focused on developing something in the short amount of time, but we also want to make sure that they have a strategy for what will happen next before they end the sprint. And one way that we've found this to be very effective is through product sustainability milestones during the sprint. And so during during those milestone calls, we ask all the tech teams to join this call, but we also bring in, past tech teams and the product advisors to share key insights into, what are product sustainability strategies that have worked in the past? Is it a handoff strategy to a community-based organization? Or is it something else? But really thinking about, who is going to maintain the product? Who is going to address customer questions or needs? Who's going to update data when it comes out in new iterations? And so through product sustainability milestones and product workshops, we've been able to bring in expertise from past tech teams and from product advisors in the sprint and from the past to really give teams some of those key insights. And during our demo days, the last 2 years, we've run a speed mentorship session. So we've brought in really experts from industry to meet with each of the teams for really quick, 15-minute sessions to give them some of those key insights to hear, what is their pitch, and then what advice could these folks from outside of government give as it comes to, the team's need for funding. How might they think about that? Or, what is their go-to-market strategy? And so we really try to bring in these stakeholders both throughout the sprint and through these product mentorship sessions and the product sustainability milestone to make sure that teams are getting those key insights. And so really this is an example of bringing folks in from outside of government who are able to offer a new perspective. And so I'll turn it over to Lorena to introduce our guest speaker today, who is a past product advisor from the Opportunity Project, and we're really looking forward to hearing some of the insights that he's able to share with us.
Thanks, Anna. So now we are really excited to introduce Froilan Irizarry Rivera, who is a longtime collaborator of the Opportunity Project. And he has often served as a product advisor in mentoring sessions and throughout the top sprint process, but he's also a CFA brigade leader for the Code for Puerto Rico Brigade. So he'll talk a little bit about his experience with the top teams in the past and provide some insights into product sustainability, experiences and learning in civic tech in general, and some of the challenges that he has seen come up in the civic tech space. So with that, thank you so much, Froy, for joining us today.
Thanks for the introduction, Lorena. Hello, everybody that's watching us right now. So my name is Froilan Irizarry Rivera. As Lorena mentioned, I am currently a co-captain in Code for Puerto Rico. And at first, what really brought me into TOP was the opportunity to talk to teams that are still trying to figure out what their sustainability is after the top process and after the sprint. And a lot of the questions that, for example, I get being from the civic tech sector and more on the community engagement and thinking about how to sustain a community-led project is, so how do I get people to help us out in this project? Should we be a volunteer-based organization? Should we hand this project over to maybe a organization that has tech teams? And a lot of questions also revolve around, well, hosting is expensive. How can we maybe monetize or maybe get grants, et cetera? And a lot of the insight that I've learned from these teams and over the course of the last couple of years dealing with issues in Puerto Rico, both in CFA with Maria and other natural disasters, is that sustainability for a civic tech project isn't just a checkbox. And we communicate this to the top teams from the start. It has to be baked into your plan, because if you're doing a social impact civic tech project where people start depending on this and suddenly funds run out and you can't maintain it and you can't sustain it and you don't have volunteers to keep it going, real life issues can arise from that, be it in disaster relief, be it things like SNAP and other areas of a daily life of people that are depending on on these projects. And a huge thing that I, for example, tell these teams is that you really need to know where not only are your users and how your users are going to interact with your product as part of the sustainability, but also where your collaborators are coming from. And depending on where your collaborator is coming from, volunteers and might not even be on the table. For example, in Puerto Rico right now, 43% of the population is considered near the poverty line. Bringing in a product into Puerto Rico and then trying to sustain it through volunteerism is probably not going to work. Asking people that have to worry about where my next meal is going to come from, how am I going to pay rent, to donate their time to a product that they might see as commercial really defeats the purpose. And it might also create a bit of maybe community badwill, saying that, well, you're making money off of this, why are you asking me to volunteer? So a part of this sustainability effort should always be, where am I going with this? And depending on where, how can I pay people? How can I really impact communities, not just with the product, but maybe with the sustainment and maintainability of this product? In Code for Puerto Rico, this is something that we're trying to fix. And the reason why I keep coming back to TOP as an advisor and as a mentor is because TOP brings this mentality also to the table, to their teams, so that we are not just thinking about how are we going to build it, how are you going to deploy it, and how are we going to sustain it, but also how are we going to impact people by maybe taking some of our funds and having people work on the product, paid work on the product that are also improving their lives. And I think that's a huge and important part for top teams to consider, especially some of the teams that come at least towards me and saying, like, we want this to be open source, we want this to be available to absolutely everybody, we want to be super transparent with everything we do, and that's all great. And in CFA we like live and breathe that, but there's also something to think about. Well, if it's a product, how can we get money for our cost and our labor? So that's something for those of you who are listening, if these fine folks at the Opportunity Project knock on your door and ask to be a mentor, it's an incredibly fulfilling experience to talk to these teams that bring in a very passionate look into the problem statements for the sprint. And it is very much an opportunity to help teams really impact communities across the US and other areas. Who am I? So Lorena, should I pass this over to you, or are we taking questions now?
Yeah, certainly. Actually, we want to talk a little bit about getting involved, and specifically around some of the ways that you can engage in the upcoming sprints. So we'll touch on that, and I know we're close to time, so we want to certainly open it up for questions and have a discussion with the audience. I'm still having issues, so I can't progression, but I'm sure you're probably seeing the slide on the 2021 sprint. So this year, you can get involved in tracks from July through October. Two sprints, we stagger through sprints throughout the year. The first one is a theme around the world post-COVID, which is going to be touching on two different aspects of the world post-COVID. One, climate and environment. So for example, shifts on climate change trajectory, norms for climate relevant behaviors, environmental justice, and others. And then on the society and economy track, supporting small businesses, specifically minority-owned businesses, thinking about all of our work from an equity lens in this digital transition, community support system, educational equity, digital divide, and how can we actually think about specifically underserved communities as well in this world post-COVID. And, that brings in a lot of other issues like technical assistance, e-commerce, and many other aspects of the economy as well. The second theme is around engagement with census decennial data. So as you all probably all know, the 2020 census happened last year, and the count was finalized in October, and the data is going to start to trickle out this year. So we're going to run a sprint from September to November, specifically looking for minority service institutions, students, academia, universities, but really looking at what are the user advocates that actually need and understand the value of this data for local decision making. And I know a lot of you that represent brigades do work very closely with local government in using this data and better than most how valuable that is. But specifically helping the public understand, and particularly underserved communities and what we call the hard to count populations, see themselves in the 2020 census data, understand the importance of that data, and also the aspect of data literacy and addressing data literacy for those communities that need it the most, as well as the topic of trust and transparency with an equity lens. So these are the themes for 2021. We are actually having an open call for problem statements. It's on our website, and maybe Drew or Anna, you can drop the link directly to our site on the chat. We have an open call for problem statement submissions that is closing on Monday. So this next Monday, May 17th. And again, it's on these topics of the world post-COVID, society, economy, and environment. Or if you have any other interest in potential problem statements, please submit it anyway. There's, of course, a lot that can be tied to society, economy, and environment. That's it's broad by design. So if you're working on a project and you're a CFA brigade that aligns to this topic and you want to participate in the sprint, please reach out to us. If you're a technology company or you're a nonprofit organization, there's a role for everyone. So we have the tech teams, we have product advisors, we have the user advocate role, and we have data subject matter experts. So if you're from state and local government and you're hearing this right now, we would love to elevate state and local data sets as well that could feed into these two problem statements. And then next, we are launching our top grand prize challenge, which is going to be open in the summer. And we use a challenge.gov platform for those of you that are familiar with it. If not, check out challenge.gov. Essentially post challenges, opportunities. We ran our first challenge in 2019, like Anna said before, and it's going to be open through October 2021, and then we announce the winners in our demo week at the end of the year. And we can share this this deck out so you have all of the links. But if you go to our website, you'll also see a product development toolkit that you can leverage. So even if you don't participate in the top 2021 sprint, in the official, facilitated sprint process that we have been detailing out for you, you can still use our toolkits and align to any of these problem statements and do it on your own timeline with your own stakeholders and still participate in the Prize Grant Challenge and submit your proposal. And then, of course, we want all of you to sign on for our sprints in 2021. We're going to be recruiting for technology teams, user advocates, product advisors. If you're state, local government, and you have data sets that you want to elevate or that they could be used for these sprints, please reach out to us. If you go to opportunity.census.gov, click on the right-hand side, get involved, and then scroll on the bottom. You can contact us. There's a contact form, and just let us know your interest. You can also reach out via email to our team, and I think it was dropped in the chat. We'll drop that again. But with that, I know we just have a few minutes left, so we'll open it up for Q&A, and we're very excited to share more and answer your questions. And thanks so much for joining us. And thanks to Froilan, our guest speaker for today, for giving input on your experience and some of the challenges that you've seen in civic tech. So thanks for joining us, Frey. I think we can just go to the chat and answer people's questions, but if you want to Continue to drop questions there and engage. We're happy to have an open discussion.
So while we're waiting, in the last, oh, I'm sorry. I'm not sure if that was or if someone else is jumping in, but I'll just say we answered a question, but just to remind everyone again, if you go to our website, you'll be able to sign up. And that is where we will blast out several emails when it's time, when we're calling for all of those participants. So please make sure you sign up there, and we will, you'll get all of our updates in terms of other ways to engage. And then we've shared the link to the open call for problem statements. If you're a nonprofit, if you're any level of government wanting to submit a problem statement, we would love to hear from you all. Also, in our final moment, I dropped this in the chat, but we are going to be hiring a designer and a facilitator in the near future. So, of course, wanted to share that with the CFA community, and we'll post it on the jobs board as well. But if you're interested, we'll drop our team's email in the chat one more time. We'd love to hear from you if you're interested or if you have any recommendations.
Just make sure that you're using the Q&A functionality. If you click on session on the right-hand side of your screen, click Q&A, and we'll see the questions trickle in. I know we have another minute or so left to conclude the session, but we are looking forward to answer any and all questions. Thanks, Sarah, for joining. We just saw your post. Thank you all for joining today. I hope it was insightful. And again, you can contact us at the email census.opportunityproject@census.gov with anything related to the Opportunity Project. If you're interested in job opportunities, census.openinnovationlabs@census.gov, and check out our website as well. And the contact us form is linked here too. So there are a few ways you can get in touch with our team. Thanks everyone for joining. Drew, Anna, Froy, anything else you'd like to add before we wrap up?
No, thank you all for joining. And thanks again, Froy, for joining us.
Thank you for the invitation, and thanks everybody for listening.
Have a great evening all. Thanks.